We start with the preface to the first edition of The Meaning of the Holy Quran, Abdullah Yusuf Ali. I do not wish to write a long preface. I wish merely to explain the history of my project, the scope and plan of this work, and the objects I have held in view. In separate introductory notes, I've mentioned the useful books to which I have referred under the headings Commentaries on the Quran, Translations of the Quran, and Useful Works of Reference. I have similarly explained the system which I have followed in the transliteration of Arabic words and names, the abbreviations I have used, and the principal divisions of the Quran. It may be asked, is there any need for a fresh English translation? To those who ask this question, I commend a careful consideration of the facts which I have set forth in my note on the translations of the Quran. After they have read it, I would invite them to take any particular passage, say 274 or 202 or 264, and compare it with any previous version they choose. If they find that I have helped them even the least bit further in understanding its meaning, or appreciating its beauty, or catching something of the grandeur of the original, I would claim that my humble attempt is justified. It is the duty of every Muslim, man, woman, or child, to read the Quran and understand it according to his own capacity. If any one of us attains some knowledge or understanding of it by study, contemplation, and the test of life, both outward and inward, it is his duty, according to his capacity, to instruct others and share with them the joy and peace which result from contact with the spiritual world. The Quran, indeed every religious book, has to be read not only with the tongue and voice and eyes, but with the best light that our intellect can supply, and even more with the truest and purest light which our heart and conscience can give us. It is in this spirit that I would have my readers approach the Quran. It was between the ages of 4 and 5 that I first learned to read its Arabic words. To revel in its rhythm and music, and wonder at its meaning. I have a dim recollection of the Khatam ceremony, which closed that stage. It was called completion. It really just began a spiritual awakening that has gone on ever since. My revered father taught me Arabic, but I must have imbibed from him into my innermost being something more, something which told me that all the world's thoughts, all the world's most beautiful languages and literatures are but vehicles for that ineffable message which comes to the heart in rare moments of ecstasy. The soul of mysticism and ecstasy is in the Quran, as well as the plain guidance for the plain man, which a world in a hurry affects to consider as sufficient. It is good to make this personal confession to an age in which it is in the highest degree of unfashionable to speak of religion, or spiritual peace, or consolation, an age in which words like these draw forth only derision, pity, or contempt. I've explored Western lands, Western manners, and the depths of Western thought and Western learning to an extent which has rarely fallen to the lot of an Eastern mortal, but I have never lost touch with my Eastern heritage. Through all my successes and failures, I have learned to rely more and more upon the one true thing in all life, the voice that speaks in a tongue above that of mortal man. For me, the embodiment of that voice has been in the noble words of the Arabic Quran, which I've tried to translate for myself and apply to my experience again and again. The service of the Quran has been the pride and privilege of many Muslimin. I felt that with such life experience as has fallen to my lot, my service to the Quran should be to present it in a more fitting garb in English. That ambition I've cherished in my mind for more than 40 years. I've collected books and materials for it. I have visited places, undertaken journeys, taken notes, sought the society of men, and tried to explore their thoughts and hearts in order to equip myself for the task. Sometimes I have considered it too stupendous for me. The double task of understanding the original and reproducing its nobility, its beauty, its poetry, its grandeur, and its sweet, practical, reasonable application to everyday experience. Then I blamed myself for lack of courage, the spiritual courage of men who dared all in the cause, which was so dear to them. Two sets of apparently accidental circumstances at last decided me. A man's life is subject to inner storms far more devastating than those in the physical world around him. In such a storm, in the bitter anguish of a personal sorrow which nearly unseated my reason and made life seem meaningless, a new hope was born out of a systematic pursuit of my long-cherished project. Watered by tears, my manuscript began to grow in depth and earnestness, if not bulk. I guarded it like a secret treasure. Wanderer that I am, I carried it about thousands of miles to all sorts of countries and among all sorts of people. At length, in the city of Lahore, I happened to mention the matter to some young people who held me in respect and affection. They showed an enthusiasm and an eagerness which surprised me. They almost took the matter out of my hands. They asked for an immediate publication. I had various bits ready, but not even one complete sipara. That's the Urdu for a Juz'a, which is the Arabic for a 30th part of the Quran. They made me promise to complete at least one sipara before I left Lahore. As if by magic, a publisher, a katib, calligraphist to write the Arabic text, an engraver of blocks for such text, a printer were found, all equally anxious to push forward the scheme. Blessed be youth for its energy and determination. Where others flinch, rash youth will dare. And if magic is the art and science of religion, that's an okay term to use. Gentle and discerning reader, what I wish to present you is an English interpretation side by side with the Arabic text. The English shall be not a mere substitution of one word for another, but the best expression I can give to the fullest meaning which I can understand from the Arabic text. The rhythm, music, and exalted tone of the original should be reflected in my English interpretation. It may be but a faint reflection, but such beauty and power as my pen can command shall be brought to its service. I want to make English itself an Islamic language, if such a person as I can do it. And I must give you all the accessory aid which I can. In rhythmic prose, or free verse, whichever you like to call it, I prepare the atmosphere for you in a running commentary. Introducing the subject generally, I come to the actual surahs, where they are short. I give you 1 or 2 paragraphs of my rhythmic commentary to prepare for you the text. Where the surah is long, I introduce such subject matter in short, appropriate paragraphs of the commentary from time to time, each indicating the particular verses to which it refers. The paragraphs of the running commentary are numbered consecutively. with some regard to the connection with the preceding and following paragraphs. It is possible to read this running rhythmic commentary by itself to get a general bird's eye view of the contents of the Holy Book before you proceed to the study of the book itself. And so I've put that, I've shared that last year. So in the Ramadan 1441 stuff, you'll see that, but I don't think I listed which Ramadan in the title. The text in English is printed in larger type than the running commentary in order to distinguish at a glance the substance from the shadow. It is also displayed differently in parallel columns with the Arabic text. Each surah and the verse of each surah is separately numbered, and the numbers are shown page by page. The system of numbering the verses has not been uniform in previous translations. European editors and translators have allowed their numbering to diverge considerably from that accepted in the East. This causes confusion in giving and verifying references. The different qira'ahs sometimes differ as to the punctuation stops and the numbering of the verses. This is not a vital matter, but it causes confusion in references. It is important that, at least in Islamic countries, one system of numbering should be adopted. I have adopted mainly that of the Egyptian edition published under the authority of the King of Egypt. This will probably be accepted in Egypt and in Arabic-speaking countries, as those countries generally look up to Egypt in matters of literature. I am glad to see that the text shortly to be published by the Anjumani Himayati Islam of Lahore is following the same system of numbering. I recommend to other publishers in India the same good example. If once this is done, we shall have a uniform system of numbering. I have retained the numbering of sections as it is universally used in Arabic copies and marks a logical division of the surahs, of the suwar. You gotta use the right plural, right? I have supplied a further aid to the reader in indicating subdivisions of the sections into paragraphs. They are not numbered, but are distinguished by the use of a flowery initial letter. In translating the text, I have aired no views of my own, but followed the received commentators. Where they differ among themselves, I have had to choose what appeared to me to be the most reasonable option from all points of view. Where it is a question merely of words, I have not considered the question important enough to discuss in the notes. But where it is a question of substance, I hope adequate explanations will be found in the notes. Where I have departed from the literal translation in order to express the spirit of the original better, I have departed from the literal translation. Where I have departed from the literal translation in order to express the spirit of the original better, in English, I have explained the literal meaning in the notes. For example, in 204 and in 226, in choosing an English word for an Arabic word, a translator necessarily exercises his own judgment and may unconsciously be expressing a point of view that is inevitable. Let me explain the scope of the notes. I have made them as short as possible, consistently with the subject I have in view. These to give the English reader, scholar, as well as general reader, a fairly complete but concise view of what I understand to be the meaning of the text. To discuss theological controversies or enter into polemical arguments I've considered outside my scope. Such discussions and arguments may be necessary and valuable, but they should find a place in separate treatises, if only out of respect to the Holy Book. Besides, such discussions leave no room for more important matters on which present-day readers desire information. In this respect, our commentators have not always been discreet. On questions of law, the Quran lays down general principles, and these I have explained. I have avoided technical details. These will be found discussed in their proper place in my book on Anglo-Mohammedan law. Nor have I devoted much space to grammatical or philological notes. On these points, I consider that the labors of the vast body of our learned men in the past have left little new to say now. There is usually not much controversy, and I have accepted their conclusions without setting out on the reasons for them. Where it has been necessary for the understanding of the text to refer to the particular occasion for the revelation of a particular verse, I have done so briefly, but have not allowed it to absorb a disproportionate amount of space. If we found that every verse revealed for a particular occasion has also a general meaning, the particular occasion and the particular people concerned have passed away, but the general meaning and its application remain true for all time. What we are concerned about now in the 14th century of the Hijra is what guidance can we draw for ourselves from the message of Allah. I spoke of the general meaning of the verses. Every earnest and reverent student of the Quran, as he proceeds with his study, will find with an inward joy difficult to describe how this general meaning also enlarges his own capacity for understanding increases. It is like a traveler climbing a mountain. The higher he goes, the farther he sees. From a literary point of view, the poet Keats has described his feeling when he discovers Chapman's Homer. Then felt I, like some watcher of the skies, when a new planet swims into his ken, or like Snout Cortez, when, with eagle eyes, he stared at the Pacific, and all his men looked at each other with a wide surmise, silent upon a peak in Darien. How much greater is the joy and sense of wonder and miracle when the Quran opens our spiritual eyes, the meaning which we thought we had grasped expands. New worlds are opened up as we progress, still newer, and again, newer worlds swim into our ken. The miracle deepens and deepens and almost completely absorbs us. And yet we know that the face of Allah, our final goal, has not yet been reached. We are in the mulk of Suleiman 202, which the evil ones denied, belied, and even turned into blasphemy. But we can ignore a blasphemy, ridicule, and contempt, for we are on the threshold of realities, and a little perfume from the garden of the Holy One has already gladdened our nostrils. Such meaning, it is most difficult to express, but where I can, I have indicated it in the notes, in the commentary, and with the help of the rhythm and elevated language of the text. The Arabic text I have printed from photographic blocks made for me by Master Muhammad Sharif. The calligraphy is from the pen of Pir Abdul Hamid, with whom I have been in touch, and who has compiled with my desire for a bold round hand, with the words clearly separated, the vowel points accurately placed over or under the letters to which they relate, and the verses duly numbered and placed in juxtaposition with their English equivalents. Calligraphy occupies an important place in Muslim art, and it is my desire that my version should not in any way be deficient in this respect. I have been fortunate in securing the cooperation of Professor Kafar Iqbal in looking over the proofs of the Arabic text in connection with Anjuman's edition of the Arabic Quran. He has devoted much time and thought to the correct punctuation of the text, and he has also investigated its history and problems. I hope he will someday publish these valuable notes. I have been privileged to see the Anjuman's text before its formal publication. I consider it the most carefully prepared text of any produced in India, and I have generally followed it in punctuation and the numbering of verses. The only points on which any difficulties are likely to arise on the Quranic text. People agree about the text, but there's differing numbers and different copies, but if you have all the same words and all the same letters, and I mean, as far as each dialect is concerned, and really it is the same words if you're, using the different dialect. A scene for a sod, a meme for a noon. But you can't willy-nilly switch that. You got to actually know. Okay, the original copy of 1934. In this edition, the Quranic text is taken from Mus'haf al-Medina al-Munawwara. So I've seen it in earlier editions of this. It has been my desire to have the printing done in the best style possible, with new type, on good and glazed paper, and with the best ink procurable. I hope the results will please those who were good enough to approve of the more essential features of the work, the proprietors of the Ripon Press, and all their staff, but especially Mr. Badruddin Badr, their proof examiner, have taken a keen interest in their work. The somewhat unusual demand made on their time and attention they have met cheerfully, and I am obliged to them. The publisher, Sheikh Mohammed Ashraf, has thrown himself heart and soul into his work, and I hope the public will appreciate his efforts. My plan is to issue each sipara or juz'a as it is ready, at intervals of not more than 3 months. As the work proceeds, I hope it will be possible to accelerate the pace. The paging will be continuous in the subsequent volumes. The final binding will be in either 3 or 2 volumes. I believe 2 is the volume that one has, but I don't think I've seen it in 2 volumes. I've listed as 2 volumes in one thing. No, I've seen it, but I haven't held it in my hands. It is my intention to provide a complete analytical index to the whole. I hope all interested will sign the publisher's subscription order. In advance, one final word to my readers: read, study, and digest the holy book. Read slowly and let it sink into your heart and soul. Each study will, like virtue, be its own reward. If you find anything in this volume to criticize, please let it not spoil your enjoyment of the rest. If you write to me, quoting chapter and verse, I shall be glad to consider your criticism, but let it not vex you if I exercise my own judgment in deciding for myself. Any corrections accepted will be gratefully acknowledged. On the other hand, if there is something that specially pleases you or helps you, please do not hesitate to write me. I have given you other interests to help you. It will be a pleasure to know that my labor has not been in vain. If you address me in care of my publisher at his Lahore address, he will always forward the letters to me. Abdullah Yusuf Ali. Dhul al-Hijjah, the 12th month, 1352. I think the 18th is important date to the Shias, but we're not seeing that he's Shia. But so April 4th, 1934, of the Common Era in Lahore. And so it is that everyone's responsible for their own translation and understanding and stuff that they are using. And there's a difference between the understanding and translation and the actual text. So do not criticize for things that may not actually be part of what we're seeing here. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.